Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Sharon Bonney, and I'm the Executive Director for the Coalition on Adult Basic Education. This webinar is brought to you in partnership with our Committee on Advocacy and Public Policy, which we affectionately call CAP. The reason for this webinar is that, as many of you know, we embarked on a national public awareness campaign called Educate and Elevate. And we embarked on that about 16 months ago, where we brought together the 55,000 adult educators across the country in a national public campaign, with the idea being that we wanted to educate funders and public policymakers and legislators on the value of adult education and really elevate adult education. Educate and Elevate, our national public awareness campaign, was in partnership with the state directors of adult education. And really proud to share that as a result of that campaign, we were able to have over 80,000 legislative contacts. And through that, we were able to stave off $86 million in budget cuts, and then also to gather an additional $35 million of funding. We were, as a field, working together to bring in $25 million more. I understand that that has not been moved forward. However, we will continue to push at the national and state level to secure additional funds. And for those of you out there that are not aware, when we are able to increase funding at the national level, that also impacts the state level as well. That brings in more funding there as well. So with this, I want to turn this over to our wonderful public policy chair. Her name is Polly Smith, and Polly has been with COABE for many, many years in many different functions. She is currently the chair of our Public Policy Committee and also our treasurer. So Polly.
Thank you, Sharon. Good morning or afternoon to everyone.
You are.
I am thrilled to be a part of this.
I can't hear you. Polly?
Yes.
Okay, now we can hear you. Great.
So thank you, Sharon. I'm thrilled to be a part of this webinar and a part of this movement that COABE is embarked on. So we have been working for the past 2 years on educating our legislators at the national level. And really, this particular quote, accredited to Tip O'Neill, is all politics is local, is really kind of what we're talking about now. And for this webinar, we want to address the advocacy efforts that we have found to be fairly successful to our local representatives and at the state level. So that's what we're doing here with this particular webinar or this meeting today. So thank you all for joining us.
Thank you so much, Polly. Because we are really working hard now to encourage much more of our grassroots base to reach up to their legislators and reach out to their legislators, we're at a point now where we're actually looking at creating an Advocate of the Year award, so a National Advocacy Award that would recognize excellence at the local level. So what we'd like to do is, we know that we brought together all these people who were talking to the federal legislators, but now we'd really like to encourage everybody in the field to be talking to the local legislators. So one way that we're going to do that is we're looking at putting together a national level award to honor advocates at the local level. Okay, so turning this back over.
So the purpose of, this is Polly again, so the purpose of our meeting today is to know how and why we invite policymakers to our programs and how to do that, know why and how to meet with policymakers in their local offices, and then some tips from those of us who've had some success, and we hope you'll join us in adding to the meeting. And now I'm turning this over to Regina Soot, who is our Student Ambassador Task Force policy person, and she has done incredible work on bringing the student voice to our efforts.
Hi everybody. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Polly, for inviting me to come and participate in this meeting today. So we're going to just kind of chat, since it's a small group of us in a meeting. And we really want you to participate as well when we ask questions. So why do we want to invite policymakers to our programs? And when I say policymakers, let's broaden that term to, your mayor, maybe council members, your city council members, state or federal legislators, even maybe, some important businesswoman in your community or your faith leaders. These kinds of activities are good for all of those folks because they really are the influencers in your community. So they might not be a legislator, but they probably are in contact with your legislators. So inviting them to your facilities, making sure that they are aware of events, and even classroom activities are really great things. Politicians especially, they want to be around people. So anytime you can offer them a group of people, generally they like to come, especially if they're candidates. Having them visit and see your program in person is a great way to show them how important adult education is, because they're going to see it in action. They're going to see the people who benefit from it. It's also a really great way to get press for your organization, but maybe your host organization, and certainly for COABE and adult ed in the field in general. So when you decide to invite a policymaker, how do you make sure you use your time wisely? You want to go to the next slide. Yeah. So don't have them come to your office and give them charts. Have them watch what's going on in progress, and have your students participate. Have them take these policymakers on a tour. Have them introduce an activity. Have them give them a chance to tell their stories, and do a little research on who you're inviting in. If they're interested in a particular issue, show them how your program is connected to that, and how your efforts are connected to their issues. And then make sure that you give lots and lots of opportunity for students to speak to the policymaker or the guest. They're really the ones who are going to make the most impactful, make the most impact with your visits. And then we're going to turn it over to Tom.
Hi, I'm Tom Nash, the immediate past president for COABE. I just would like to share with you a few examples of some local activities that you should invite policymakers to. And I really appreciate what Regina said about all the influencers that are out there. That it's not just those at the federal level, but even down to your council men and women, your people of faith, faith leaders. And the business community. We're very connected to the business community here in my program in Windham. So there are things you can invite them to, and the list is right there. I think you can see it. I've lost the screen. There we go. Okay, it's back. Graduations is one of them, and I'll tell you a quick story about that I was able to be at 2 other adult education programs graduations this past spring, where Senator Susan Collins was speaking, as well as Senator Angus King. And I did find out it was the first time Senator Susan Collins had been invited to speak at a graduation. I found that very, very odd, knowing that she's been around for so long and then none of us had thought to invite her, or maybe we weren't just successful in getting her to a program. But it was the first time she spoke at a graduation. So also, there's National Adult Education Honor Society. If you don't know anything about that, I would encourage you to check it out. There's a link there as well. Our students here in our program belong to that, and it's a nice award for them to recognize them for that at our graduation. Other things: digital stories showcases, student stories or art events. You can piggyback on we're associated with the K-12 system here at the high school. So we've oftentimes piggybacked on the district art show as well to highlight our program. Be visible at a citizenship ceremony or offer to host a citizenship ceremony. You have classrooms that have specific purposes. So you can invite someone to come in to see those activities, to view, let's say, the debate, STEM activity or career fair. We also do something in Maine. We've been doing it as long as I've been an adult ed director. It's a long time, 32 years. We have an adult student day at our state house where we do bring students along. We have students tell their stories. We've actually, this past year, we put together a book of student stories. And then, of course, all of our legislators are invited to come down. We provide food, and they mingle around in the State House. Oftentimes, the governor in past has come out to address the students, and then we're oftentimes recognized in both chambers at the state level. And the other thing is candidate events. So especially with elections coming up in the fall, it's nice. Candidates like to get themselves out there in the community and to be visible. So don't forget to invite them to events. There's also a webinar you can check. It's on hosting a special event. It's off to the right-hand side there of the slide. So you can check on that, click on that link and go to that webinar. And we'd also invite you, if you have any ideas of other ways or other things, activities that you've done at the local level that you have invited policymakers to, or you'd like to invite policymakers to, please put that in the chat room, and we're going to capture these ideas and share that with the rest of the field. So thank you. And with that, I am turning it over to, back to Sharon.
Thank you so much, Tom. I appreciate that. So this slide is all about our Educate and Elevate toolkit. And first, I'm just going to review quickly what the pieces of the toolkit are, the components of the toolkit. Then we're going to actually go in and look at it together. So in the toolkit, you'll see that there's press release, save the date postcard, fact sheets, sample proclamation, campaign video, success stories, statistics by state, social media information, and you can go right in. So I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen for a minute, and I would encourage you all just to come with me. You can get online at www.educateandelevate.org. We'll look at this together real quickly. Now, this was the result of quite a bit of work on our Educate and Elevate public awareness campaign. And this public awareness campaign has won 6 International Davies Awards and then an M&A Global Award as well. So we're really proud of that, and we intentionally built this out for the field. So our goal here really was to equip the field with the tools that they needed so that they would be able to reach legislators and build a case for why adult education is so important. Because you and I know why it's so important, but a lot of time legislators don't. So what I did is I just went to educateandelevate.org, and then I clicked over here and went down, and it says campaign toolkit here on the left-hand side. Okay, so let's move this real quick. What's great about this toolkit is there's just, first of all, right at the top, here's our Take Action button, which I love because it's a really easy, quick way to reach legislators. You can have them get on, you can have your students get on their cell phones, or you can have those in your programs get on. So we click here on the Take Action button. It takes us right to where we want to go. And when I click Take Action here, because I've already filled this out before, all my information's in, but you submit your information, you haven't done that yet. When I click submit, look at right here, it's gonna, everybody that is connected with me, including even President Trump, Vice President Pence, and then all my federal and local legislators are there. And then there's an editable box right here where I can change up the wording if I want to. I can add information in, but this just gives us a template to use. And then when I hit submit, it goes to my legislator. And what's really great about this is that we hear all the time from people in the field, from our members, that when they hit submit, they get an email back. Someone is reading these emails, whether it's the staff person or the legislator. But here you can, if you scroll down, you can see there's one specifically for students. You can use this as an EL Civics component in your classroom if you wanted to. But there's a way for students there to contact their legislators as well. That's one component of our toolkit. But then as well, I'm going to go back to educateandelevate.org, go back into the toolkit, and I'm going to click right here. Okay. So there's just a lot of really easy to use information here. We've got our, sample email, of course, sample email for students, fact sheets, media advisory, press release, news release template, webinar information, proclamations. So I would just really encourage you, please come in here, check this out. Feel free to share this out with other local program administrators. Feel free to share it out there at your programs. But we've really tried to provide as many tools as we possibly could for the field so that it make it easy for you to contact your legislators and easy for you to kind of mount your own local level campaign. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I just would like to ask if anybody has any questions before we go to the next slide. Any questions? Okay. Let me bring up the slide here, and I believe the next person up is Regina. Regina?
Hi.
Hi.
So you've seen, hopefully you've seen some tools that you can use and some ideas of who you could invite and what kinds of events. It's always a little nerve-wracking the first time you do it, you know. So what I would suggest you do is pick somebody that's, you know, a little like low risk. So somebody that you know is going to be a friend and is maybe not the governor. Like, I wouldn't start with the governor. Start with somebody a little bit less risky. And then once you do it, you'll see kind of how to do it. Even if you go back to the Educate and Elevate toolkit, there's even like a stakeholder event planning worksheet. There's all kinds of tools to help you do it. Here's just some tips that those of us that are on CAT came up with, you know, around, you know, making sure that your events, especially if you know them ahead of time, making sure that you send a save the date. So even if you're not sure if you're going to send them a formal invitation or give them a formal role, just get it on their calendars. I would say that if they come to your event, you should give them a role. Legislators don't generally like to come to events and not get a chance to speak or shake hands or give their opinion. So make sure that when you give them a formal invitation that you specify exactly what their role is. If you want them to give remarks, what I've done in the past is actually give them their remarks that you want them to say. I know it sounds silly, like what? Why would I write their speech for them? But many times they use a lot of the material that you give them, and so just pretend you're the governor if they're coming and give them their speech that you want and give them the words that you want them to say. Generally, those kinds of things are helpful. Make sure that you make them a champion. Publicize it on social media. Do press releases. Make sure that there's any joint, other organizations involved, that they do press releases as well. Again, not only is it helping raise awareness about adult education and the great work that your program does, but it's also maybe helping your host organization or other organizations spread the word as well. And it's helping these policymakers be connected to their community, which is what most of them really want to do. So make sure you use social media and make sure you use hashtags and that you link COABE to it as well. So now so this was, we gave you some tips and some ideas on how to do this, like when you have all this time to plan for it. But sometimes you just need to be ready to make it happen. And Polly's going to tell you about something that just happened.
So that's me in the purple, and that's our governor, Bill Walker. And he is running again. He's our incumbent, and he's running again. One of my volunteer teachers went to his fundraiser last Wednesday evening, and she stood behind him. And she said, I want you to fund education, and I want you to come meet the people that make a difference in our community. And she was talking about the students that she's working with. And so he was very interested. He said, I'm a fan of education, and indeed he has been. So that's a good story. But he pulled up his cell phone and said, how about tomorrow? And I'm on vacation while this is all happening. And I get home early, a day early, and there's a message on my phone saying, the governor's coming, the governor's coming. And so indeed, he did show up, and he asked us not to advertise it because he wasn't sure he could squeeze it in. He already had his schedule, but he wanted to come at the request of probably one of his major donors. I don't know, but he came. He was about 3.5 hours later than we expected him to be. And he showed up 5 minutes before the end of classes were over. And, the most critical thing they need to see are the people we serve and the people who benefit from our services. So I was my bossy self and said, just follow me. I need to get you upstairs to a classroom so you can meet people. So we didn't have a chance to schmooze with anybody downstairs or any of the other folks. And he was extremely interested. He was engaged with everyone who had the language to talk with him. He wanted to know where everybody was from. He's never met a diverse group of people like this before. So it was a really good eye-opener. And we didn't give the teachers very much notice that he was coming, but they recognized the opportunity and did a great job of preparing their folks in their classroom to be welcoming and gracious, and indeed they were. He was really sorry he had to leave, but when they're on the scheduled visits, they don't have much time. So it's really critical that we have our stories ready, no matter when we expect them, even if we don't expect them, to have our stories ready, our mission statements, and to just have our powerful message ready to go. And I think he got it. We're all sending around a thank you letter to all of the students who had a chance to talk to him so they can reaffirm his visit and his interest. So that's my story, and it was pretty exciting.
Great, thanks, Polly. And I think that once you do these kinds of events, that you're better able to handle these kind of the spur of the moment visits. So the second part of our meeting today is really to talk about meeting policymakers in their offices. And so that's what the next slides will be about. You have a little bit more control over these kinds of things, because if they come to a graduation, like graduation is the main theme of the event, if you go to their local office, it's your meeting, and make sure that you take students. COABE has been really great about training students how to do this through the ambassador program. We trained 10, 12 states at the COABE conference in Phoenix, and hopefully we'll do some more of that coming up in Colorado, and then again at the COABE 2019 conference in New Orleans. So don't just bring students, make sure that they're ready for these kinds of visits. If you go to the next slide. Oh. So why do we do this? Again, because we want to make sure that the people who control the money, they know what adult ed is. Many times, I think probably everybody in adult ed hears this, that people aren't sure what adult education is. They might think it's basket weaving or art or something like that. And so really helping them understand about the basic literacy needs in their community, the English language needs, the citizenship needs, family literacy needs, the various adult ed programs that might be in your communities. It's very important that they understand so that they can make the right decisions. They also want to make sure, that they're making decisions that will improve the quality of life in their communities. So make sure that you try to tie those awareness building pieces into your meeting. If they don't know what adult education is, how are they supposed to make a decision about it? If they don't know people who it affects, if they don't know students that are in classes or who have succeeded in classes, how are they going to make those decisions? When you go in for these kinds of awareness building meetings, especially the very first ones, make sure you take kind of basic data with you, and make sure that you want to make, if you're taking a student from an ESL class, give them ESL data. If you're taking a student from a GED class, or HiSET or TASC, bring that kind of data. How many people are graduating, on these tests? How many people are transitioning on? So try to match your data to raising awareness. So before you go to the meeting, when you're kind of prepping for the meeting, make sure you do a little bit of research. Next slide, please. Do a little bit of research so that you understand what the policymakers' interests are, what their background is. This is on the federal level, but again, all meetings are the same, whether it's with a local policymaker or not. But we had a meeting just recently in Washington with some folks in Oklahoma with their representative, and they kind of, they figured out, because they had done some research, that, so-and-so's neighbor was a cousin to their neighbor, and it was like a family reunion almost during this visit. Getting to know your policymaker through their websites or their social media accounts is a really great way to prepare for a meeting. Make sure that you're prepared as far as timing. Who's going to start the meeting? Who's going to say what? What kind of questions are going to be asked? What's your purpose? Try to keep control of the meeting. Policymakers like to talk a lot about things. So you want it to be back and forth. And again, we train students in the ambassador program to do this so that they can be succinct and concise and tell their stories and connect it with the questions and awareness building. Definitely make sure that students are the focus. Truthfully, I have seen meetings, again, at every level where a group of students walk in and maybe I'm there and they are just like, they set aside over here, Regina, we don't really care about you. They want to talk to the students. Wave also has a really great webinar, and you can see that link there if you want to talk, learn a little bit more about kind of how to do those kinds of meetings. And I'm going to turn it back now over to Polly, who will tell you just about some things around materials that you can bring to kind of make the case.
Thanks, Regina. So we encourage you to create your own materials that are local or state, that reflect what you are doing locally and the state level, if you can. Use the material. And so this is an example of the Pennsylvania Adult Association for Continuing Education. I think that's what they're called. They created this, well, it's kind of like a fact sheet, using a template that we had given them from the Educate and Elevate toolkit. So we encourage you to use the toolkit to build your template and then put in your local statistics. And so and the next slide is an example of the kind of information you can present to your local folks, and you would search many sources to find information that would kind of address your issues and your state needs. This one is a particularly interesting one. It's from the U.S. Department of Agriculture that talks about the difference between rural and urban high school completion statewide. If this is not for local distribution necessarily, unless you are in some of those high density areas that show up on the map. But these are kind of, it's just another example of material that you can share with your folks that is a visual and still kind of demonstrates the need for adult education. So the next slide is also an example that it was produced by the Kentucky Adult Education. Many of the materials that are in this one, they use the Educate and Elevate campaign, and they're just putting in local and state data. There's a lot of information on that one piece of paper. What we want to remember is the folks aren't interested in getting a book, but they have a resource with facts that they can trust, and they want to have a place to contact if they have questions or they need a policy statement or something that they're interested in. So you see, you want to always have your contact information on whatever you leave with your folks. And then Regina is going to tell us actually how a meeting is put together from our end.
Thanks, Polly. So here are some things that we've learned over the years as far as elements of an effective meeting. You know, you can put these together in any way that you want. It's just something that we've developed over the years as far as a kind of a good script. So obviously you want to start with introductions. You want to, we always like to say, thank you, meeting with us, Governor. We know your time is really important and limited. We have 20 minutes for this, meeting or something. We like to kind of just put it right out there what the time is. and what the purpose is. And then we, of course, like I've said before, we like to share student stories. We want to get to know them, and so we like to pose questions. And so we do planning before a meeting. And so the students come up with the questions. What do you want to know about the governor? You know, why did he want to be a governor? What does he know about adult ed already? I always like that question, because then you can kind of get a feel for what their awareness level already is, if they have any. Make sure that you have some sort of next steps at the end of your meeting. So you don't want to just be like, thanks for meeting me, goodbye. Thanks for meeting with us. We'd love to have you at our graduation, or thanks for meeting with us. Can we come and visit again? Make sure that there's some kind of ask. And then take a picture and make sure that you put that on social media. Everybody that goes on visits with me knows that I don't like to take more than one picture, because, we have this crazy technology where we can share pictures now. So you don't want to spend more on taking pictures with everybody's phones than on the actual meeting. And then make sure you post all of those pictures, and potentially send a thank you card with a picture when you're finished. One of the things that some of the things that we've learned over the years as far as kind of do's and don'ts, I'm not going to read through all of these, since you have them, that you're going to have them available on this PowerPoint, on the next slide, the do's and don'ts. But it really, when I talk about what successful advocacy is, I generally kind of say that it's data plus stories plus relationships. And so if you think about those three things are kind of key to your advocacy efforts, and then to consider these do's and don'ts as far as, when you go into meetings. And so just a couple things that I haven't maybe said already is, make sure that when your students tell their stories, that they connect it, or you connect it to the larger issue. So, if I go in and tell my story, I'm one program director out of hundreds in this country who care about adult ed. So make sure that everyone in the meeting understands that they're representing other people. That's a great do. Try to stay on time. I would say that's one of the things that can happen if you go overtime, is that you don't get the ending and the closure and the ask in. So make sure you stay on time. You don't want it to be so scripted, though, that you lose spontaneity. That you don't have any kind of back and forth. That it's totally scripted. But don't let them take over the meeting. And having everybody have roles helps with that. So you'll have this this tool, the do's and don'ts, available as part of this PowerPoint. So the next slide. So some things that you can bring, not sometimes students, maybe you can only bring one student, or maybe you can't bring any students there. But if you the best thing to do is bring students on visits to local offices. But you can also have really great student-centered kind of takeaways. So make sure that they tell their story, of course, at the meeting, but have them write it down too, and leave it, so in case the policymaker wants to refer back to it. If you have a DVD of an event or a YouTube link of a student story or graduation speech, bring that as well. Write that on a piece of paper with a link so that they can see that. If there's time in a meeting, click on it and watch it with your policymaker. Make sure you bring, of course, program data. Bring maybe letters from all the students. So again, this is students are able to show that they're representing a much larger group. So like, I'm here representing my class of 30 other ESL students. Maybe bring questions, make it a class activity. Students can say, my classmates wanted to know this from you. And you can also bring letters from employers, to leave behind. At the end of the meeting, the next slide, these are just some ideas, making sure that you get business cards so that you can email materials and stay in touch. Make sure that your policymaker knows that you are a resource, and that if they ever have any questions about adult education, either they can ask you and you can answer, or you can connect them to someone who can. Make sure that, that again, everybody knows what's happening now in the case of Polly's visit with the governor, he didn't want it publicized, but she's now been doing, tweets in social media after the event. And then make sure, of course, that you send them a thank you, and make sure if they had any questions that you provide follow-up. It's really important that you use whatever event that you've invited them to, or any visit to their office, as that first step into relationship building. It shouldn't just be, when times are tough. It shouldn't just be when someone's up for re-election. You should build relationships with your policymakers throughout the year, good years or bad years. I think we're going to open it up to questions now, and Polly.
So Polly may be unavailable. Regina,
Okay.
Okay. Polly, are you available?
Sorry, I have been having some internet issues, so if I'm gone, I know you will carry on. But there is, from David in the chat room, another connection to make with legislators, especially at the federal level, is to be on their mailing list. This helps you know their key interests, and they also alert you when the legislator might be having either an in-person town meeting or even one by, is that David? Phone. So his representative has a phone town meeting tomorrow night, and he's made sure that all the programs in his district know that the event is happening, because this is an election year. Thanks, David. Anyone else have any comments, suggestions?
And I think it's a small enough group. Maybe they can they just unmute themselves and ask, Sharon?
They're all unmuted, yes.
So,
And then
any questions or comments, folks?
I think you can send it even if you're not like the client necessarily. Did you and Bobby talk about that before? Yeah,
Caitlin, I don't think we can hear you.
I think some people muted themselves back again. They were unmuted and so.
I think I heard somebody asking a question or making a comment. I just couldn't really hear it fully.
It was Caitlin. She was asking a question, but it was very, very soft, low. Caitlin, are you still there? She
Yes.
unmuted.
Okay, so let's turn the page over and.
Okay. So we have just a few more minutes here for questions, and then if we don't have any questions, that's not a problem. We have been recording this video, and we'll be happy to share it out as well. So how about it's 2:38, how about we'll give 2 more minutes for Karen, Tina, Caitlin, Rebecca, or even David on our board to ask questions. Anything we can help you with before we close out the call?
Yeah. Sharon, is there going to be more information coming out about the national awards revolving around excellence at the local level? Will there be some more information coming out on that soon?
Absolutely, yes. We plan to work on that over the summer. So when we launch the national awards, we'll include that information as well. Thank you for your question, David.
We know there are really great things happening out there on the local level, and so please, if you have done things or know of other programs that have done things around, let us know, because we want to include that as a resource.
Okay. Thank you, Regina. Tom, did you have any parting words?
No. I just want to say thank you again for those that took the time to be on the call today, and hope you found the information helpful.
Yes, thank you all for making the time for this. And I would personally like to put out a special thank you to Regina, Polly, and Tom, who took the time to work on this PowerPoint and took the time to really prepare for this. So Tom is our immediate past president, Regina is our student engagement chair, and Polly Smith is our Committee on Advocacy and Public Policy chair. So thank you to the three of you. You're just, I think the world of you. I'm so thankful to be able to work with all three of you. You are out there doing great work, so thank you.
And thank you, Sharon.
Thank you for doing a webinar on your birthday.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, everybody. So with that, I see Kay joined us here. So Kay, as our board president, Kay, if you have any final words, if not, then we'll just begin.
No, it was what I got to see, you guys. It was excellent. I'm sorry I was late. I had a earlier function this morning, and then of course logging on is always an issue. But once I did get on, I was able to certainly enjoy, and I encourage you all to take this back now to your local people. You know, everything we do with CoWave, you can find this and find all of this information. So just be sure and use this information. Take it back to your local programs. Take it to your meetings. Get your teachers, get your local teachers, get all the folks involved with advocacy, because that's what it's going to take for us to be the system that we know we need to be. I hope you all have a great day. Thank you all. Sharon, happy birthday. And thank you all for efforts you put forth with this and the work that's been done on this. And we look forward to much, much more work. Thank you all again.
Thank you. Bye now.